credibility is really the greatest asset you have as a leader, right? So sometimes the trade-off is going to call for you to say the hard thing, say the more difficult thing, say the more canon thing, so that you can give people clarity and also protect your credibility.
Yeah. Well, today I have Debra Ceffalio with me, who is the founder of Wildwood Communications, providing strategic counsel and hands-on support for senior leaders in their communications. Thanks for being here, Debra.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you. We go back a long way, and it's great to see what you've built here with your business.
Thank you so much. And you're building your business, and I thought it'd be cool to talk about that.
Awesome.
Building stuff is really fun.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And yeah, we go way back to the Granger days. And I, again, can't remember how many, like once it's like past 5 years, I just don't even know how many years it is.
You file it away in the long ago cabinet. Yes, yes. Well, we've done some video shoots together for sure out in the distribution floors. Yes.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, you have, and speaking of kind of your background, like you have some serious like corporate experience. Granger, US Foods, I mean, these are like brands that we all know. And you have that background, I guess. You know, that's all serious stuff, but like when you think about that time, what's like the weirdest thing that you ever came across or worked on?
I have so many memories. Actually, video shoots make for some of the great memories. I do remember standing on top of a distribution center in New Jersey while I was 8 months pregnant with my daughter, looking at solar panels. So that was one memory. Yeah.
Holy cow. Were you like, were you like, I should be here. This is totally fine.
A great thing to be doing while you're pregnant. Exactly. But yeah, I had the opportunity to travel with lots of leaders, go out and see operations in action, which always makes for fun behind the scenes, seeing behind a grocery, like how a grocery business runs, seeing how a US Foods distribution center runs, standing in a ice cream cooler, which is very, very cold.
Yeah.
Yes.
How long were you in that cooler?
Too long.
And are you
Probably
okay?
2 minutes. Yeah.
Well, I am sure you have a lot of really cool stories. You know, when you but even before that time, I always like to ask people, like, what were you doing before you got into this role and you know, this sort of corporate world? Like, what kind of brought you into this world in the first place?
Oh, great question. When I was an undergrad in college, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a journalist. I took communications courses, and I really set out with that as my goal. One thing led to another, and right out of undergrad, I ended up moving to Alaska.
Whoa.
Yeah, right?
That's
Left
pretty
turn.
cool.
I originally wanted to work for magazines in New York, and next thing you know, I was living in Juneau, Alaska. Followed my brother up there kind of on a lark and ended up staying. So I worked up there for about 6 years. I worked for the governor's office, helping write back then mail newsletters were a huge thing. Not as much anymore, but some. We were just learning how to build websites. So I was building one of the first websites for the governor. Had some exposure, got to go in press conferences and work with the media team there.
So you were like right away working with senior leader.
Yeah. It was, you know, a huge blessing, not only to see it with my own eyes, but also to see people who were farther along in their career doing that senior leader communications council. I just tried to soak up every lesson that I could. And then I moved over and I worked at a PR agency in Alaska. I like to tell folks it was the largest PR agency in Alaska. It had 21 people.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, it's all relative.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
So there got to work on some oil and gas accounts and the Alaska Railroad account. And again, just, you know, a thing that's run through my whole career is I just got to work for great mentors and I tried to make the most of it. And I got to see them work with clients and be involved in working with clients on crisis communications. And I realized I just fell in love with PR and communications, but here's a lesson out there, I never took a business course in undergrad. I never took a single course that helped me build my business acumen. So I quickly realized that if I was going to do that for a career, I needed to build those skills. So by then I had married my husband, who is born and raised in Alaska, and I talked him to moving into Chicago so I could get my graduate degree at Northwestern. And that's where I took the business and finance courses and the marketing courses, as well as communication courses, but kind of rounded out my portfolio. So yeah, that's how I came to be in this field.
Very cool. So you've learned a lot of things. You've seen a lot of, I mean, you've worked at these different companies. These
Right.
are big companies. Now you're out on your own doing this. So you've got a lot of reps in here, and you bring a lot to the table. I guess let's dive into, kind of connecting the dots for people.
Yeah.
Like what makes a really good communicator at the senior level? And I think we're talking about like CEOs and executives and people, right, that are out there. What comes to your mind when it comes to that phrase? How does that fit in these days? Is that new? Is it something we've talked about for a while?
I guess when I think about it, so many things that are complex are also simple. And when I think about all the leaders that I've worked with that have been the best communicators, they are people who prioritize it. Running a large corporation.
They prioritize communications.
Prioritize communications, right? So these are big, hard roles, ton of respect for these roles and the decisions they have to make. But when leaders see communications as an essential part of their job, they prioritize it, and they prioritize their communications as a way to engage and serve their employees. That's when the magic happens.
Sure.
And those are the times, those are the people I think that can really get a lot of return on the investment that they, if you will, that they put into the communications and that they put into connecting with employees beyond just one-way communications.
Yeah. For communications professionals and marketers that are, experienced with working with these people, I guess, help paint the picture of what that means for like somebody to prioritize it. Like, what does that actually look like?
Oh,
like
great question. Great question. I think it probably boils down to a couple things. One, prioritization at the most basic sense is making time for it.
Sure.
So
like it's part of your schedule? It's
part of your schedule. So you're making time to work with your communications leader, right? So that you're giving that person direction, you're having dialogue with that person as you're helping shape, and they're helping you shape the company message. You're prioritizing getting out and talking to employees in both formal and informal ways. You're willing to take the call when the media calls to do an interview, which is not always kind of in the wheelhouse of a senior leader, right? It might not be the most fun thing on your agenda. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But you're making time for those things. You're making time to prepare for those things.
Sure.
And you're taking it seriously as something that is an essential part of running a business.
Yeah. So you're prioritizing it, making it happen. It's part of your day. I guess what else comes to mind when we're thinking about what good looks like here?
I think it is thinking of communications as more than just one moment in time. So you work with corporate communicators all the time as well. There are cycles of corporate communications. There's cycles of corporate organizations where you build up, you're going to make a big announcement. There's tons of time and effort that goes into it, whether it's preparing for something like an investor day, preparing for something like a merger announcement, preparing for announcing of a reorg. Senior leaders are typically very engaged. They're working hand in hand with the communications department. There's usually one big moment in time where those things are communicated. But I think prioritizing and thinking of it at a bigger picture of realizing that's just one moment in time, and to do it well is to continue prioritizing communications beyond that one moment. So that means, as a leader, going out and listening to what people are saying about that communications, asking questions. What questions are they asking? What questions do they still have? How can you answer those? Coming back and giving updates about how things are going, being present, being visible, all of those things, instead of thinking it as just one moment in time.
So this is kind of a funny question, but probably not something you think about. Like, for maybe people earlier on in their career, what is corporate communications? Like, how is it different than any other kind of communications or marketing, like in terms of the wheelhouse of a company? Like, where does it sit?
It's a great question, and probably more complicated to answer than one would think. Typically within an organization, corporate communications involves a couple different functions or a couple different key priorities. One would be the overall messaging to the employee base, so what we would call internal communications.
Got that.
The other would be around communicating with external stakeholders, primarily through the media, sometimes through social media, sometimes helping with investor communications, working with the investor relations team.
Why is that sometimes different than marketing?
Why is
like
it
a marketing like sometimes I guess some of it's like it's a different act, but it's also sometimes marketing oversees that some of that stuff. Like they oversee corporate communications, and sometimes they don't, depending on the size of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say two things. One, marketing is typically primarily focused on customer communications, right? So all about how are you talking about what you offer to customers, bringing that offer to bear and talking about the benefits of it and connecting with customers, where typically corporate communications is thinking about a broader selection
There's an ecosystem here, the other stakeholders. So investors it's a really easy one. The board,
right?
Different people like that,
right? Suppliers, and I guess speaking of marketing, I think one of the things that I found in working with corporate communications is you are most effective when you're leading corporate communications when you have a fantastic partnership with the head of marketing and the head of investor relations, because all of those pieces, what you're saying to all those audiences, how those teams are working together, making sure the company is showing up as a united front, come together when those three functions are working together.
And also by just default, right, is it safe to say that corporate communications can often be the mouthpiece of like the CEO or the executive team, perhaps?
Yes, typically they're working with the executive team, closely with the CEO, but other members of the executive team as they lay out, what's our strategy for the year ahead? What are our priorities for the year ahead? And I think I would be remiss in not pointing out that, corporate communications is also very often on the front lines, or almost always on the front line of crisis communications, right?
Yeah, something happens at a location, you're going to be the one that's going to help talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're often the call when something goes wrong, and your job is to be prepared and then to work with the business through those situations. Like
you kind of talk about these three pillars of good communications, right? Let's talk about context. What you had the word context here. What does that mean? Why is that important?
So I guess as I was preparing for this, and as I've been thinking about as I am building my own consulting firm, I've been, just reflecting on all these years of experience I have, and kind of what are the patterns that bring good communications together, and thinking about several things around context and clarity and building connections. So, when I think about context, I think about the leader's role to really paint the overall story. And to lay out the overall roadmap of where the company is going. And especially in today's extremely complex, environment, things are changing so quickly. People are having to make decisions so rapidly that helping people understand why a company or why a team is going in a certain direction and what's the overall context that they're operating in helps them not only add purpose to what they're doing, but also empower them to make decisions because they understand the big picture.
So when you're communicating with employees, for example, having that senior leaders sort of, I guess the key word is they're building context for the employees. They understand how they fit together with a bigger piece.
Absolutely.
Of the puzzle.
And I'm sure you've seen in your experience, one thing when you're preparing leaders to communicate, like a very frequent go-to is, you're a senior leader, your job is to have answers, right? But of course you don't have all of the answers. But when you're presenting or communicating, you're often thinking about, I want to tell you what the direction is. I want to tell you what the answer is. I want to tell you, what the headline is about this decision that we've made. But what I find is even more helpful is when people slow down and take the time to provide context about that decision. So when I say that, I mean things like saying, hey, we decided to invest in this division of our company going forward. But let me tell you why we're doing that. And then let me also tell you, here's some things that were really hard about this decision. We had to make this trade-off. We had to put this thing behind. We spent 3, hours as an executive team wrestling with this thing. That context gives people confidence in what you're doing.
Right. So one big factor here is you got to be a context builder.
Right.
Okay. So your role, that's really important to know your role as a communicator.
Right. And pillar number 2 is clarity.
Okay. That seems important.
Yeah, that
sounds kind of obvious.
It does seem obvious.
So be clear, isn't that it?
Yeah.
Or is there more to it than that?
You know, that's funny that you say that, because I think a lot of things in communications are, I had a boss who used to say, use the phrase, says easy, does hard. Like, a lot of these things sound really easy until you go to do them. And when I think about clarity, I think about a couple things. So again, you have that natural human tendency to, as a leader, to want to have the answers. But when I think of clarity, I think about both being clear about what you do know and what you don't know.
Okay.
Right?
That's scary.
Super
I want
scary.
people to think that I know everything, though. How am I going to continue that?
Right. I did talk to your employees. They said you know everything.
Okay, good.
Yeah. You're good. Good
job, guys.
Yeah, it has to do with vulnerability, right?
Okay.
And building credibility. So when I think of clarity, I think about that. I think about not hiding behind buzzwords, right? So I'm sure you, as you work with leaders, use examples like, how would you say this to your next door neighbor? How would you say this in Saturday language, right? And with leaders, especially those who are, CEOs who are dealing with things like the board and investors, they really, like, those audiences really do want you to speak in there's some nuance here. Yeah, right. They're expecting you to speak in a very, financially oriented way.
Yes.
So part of it is changing that filter as you're talking to employees to make it clear what you do, what you know, and what you don't know, and making it in super approachable language.
Yeah. So clarity can look like, making sure you know your audience and making sure you're speaking their language.
Absolutely.
So that it's clear.
Absolutely. And another thing that I think clarity can look like, being okay with sharing bad news. A great example is many times when organizations make, a really tough organizational change, like a layoff or a difficult reorg, they really want to say 2 minutes later, like, and that's the last change we're ever going to make, right?
Right. They want to put that good news bread on the top.
Yeah. And we all, as humans, want to have certainty. And I'm not advocating that we go out and stir up a bunch of uncertainty and worry with employees. That's not what I'm advocating for. But you have to find the balance, because, if you communicate on Monday that there's no more changes and you come back 2 Mondays from now and you have more changes, you've lost your credibility.
Yeah.
And credibility is really the greatest asset you have as a leader, right? So sometimes the trade-off is going to call for you to say the hard thing, say the more difficult thing, say the more canon thing, so that you can give people clarity and also protect your credibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it always reminds me of the Brene Brown quote, clarity is kindness. It's kind of a hard concept to wrap your head around, but when you unpack it like the way you just kind of did, it's not very kind to anybody to sort of sugarcoat something, because you're kind of more worried about yourself in that moment. Right? You're actually thinking very selfishly about, what is this person gonna think about me or whatever? But if you're willing to have the courage to be clear and deliver the bad news, even if that means that there's some discomfort, I do think that that's kind to the person that's receiving it, right?
Yeah, and I think some of the hardest communication situations that I've worked through are working with leaders as they're managing through the M&A process. So, when you announce a potential merger, there's this long process of many months as you're waiting for the regulatory approval to go through or not go through. And that could be very torturous for employees, because they don't know what will happen if the merger goes through, if it doesn't, what that might mean. And so, when I think of clarity, another thing I think about is you can't give everybody the answers, because you don't know whether the merger will be approved. You don't know what the impact may or may not be. But how can you add some clarity in terms of taking time to really explain the process?
All right, so the 3 C's, we've got context, clarity, and is it going to be a third C? Yes.
Oh, right.
Nice. What's our third pillar? What are we talking about?
Connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, that sounds obvious. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's more in depth than that. What do we mean by connection?
Well, we do mean connecting as humans, obviously. But I think it goes back to a couple things that we talked about. That idea that communication isn't a one moment in time. It's having a authentic communications with the people that work for you, the people that you're communicating to. So that means that you're listening just as much as you're talking.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember
We have
that,
to-
like
yeah,
two
the
ears, one mouth.
situation. So more listening. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It means being visible, not just all the time, not just when there is a crisis. Like one thing that sticks in my mind in terms of visibility is early in my career, I worked at a company where this is back in the day, everybody went to the office every day. The founder of the company and the CEO of the company came down and ate lunch in the cafeteria with everybody every day. And you saw they weren't making a big show of it. They were literally just grabbing their trays, chatting with the sandwich maker and like getting their food and sitting down. But those are the kind of like small visibility moments that create human connection that I think go a long way as well.
Got it. So that kind of gets back to that term that we said earlier, and you and I were talking about servant leadership and how it's like kind of a buzzword.
Right? It's starting with the needs of the audience in mind for all of these things, right? And many of these things, that audience is employees, right?
Right.
So what do they need to be successful? Do they need more context about the situation you're operating in? Do they need more clarity about what's going on? Do you need to take time to connect with people on a personal level or kind of have more heart messages and not just head messages?
Got it, yeah.
All of those questions start with, what do the people that work for me, that work in this organization need? None of those questions start with, what do I want to say on Tuesday at 10?
And that kind of goes back to your whole thing. It's like, it's a practice. It's part of who you are and what you do. It's not like a one-time thing.
Right.
Because the what am I saying at Tuesday at 10 is a one-time event.
It's a one-time event, and often it starts, not always, but often it starts with, what do I feel that people, what do I want to say?
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of that corporate jargon we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
I always ask everybody this question.
Okay, hit me.
What is one word or phrase we should no longer say in the workplace?
Oh, wow.
What comes to mind?
Well, this weekend it was 4th of July weekend, and got to go to Michigan, and went cherry picking with my family. When we were picking, I was thinking about the phrase low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Oh, and one, it's just overused. Two, I'm not sure that the best fruit is always the lowest.
Right.
So.
Isn't that usually like the more like rotten fruit?
Right.
It's falling off the tree. So what should we say instead of low-hanging, like altogether?
Maybe we don't need a phrase. We just need to talk about specifically what we're going to do.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
That might be an idea.
Got it. So remove references to fruit and how they're hanging.
That's just one idea. That's just one idea. Yeah.
I like that. It feels a little bit clearer to me.
Exactly.
Getting out of that jargon. Well, Debra, this was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom about corporate communications.
Absolutely.
And what it even is in the first place, but also how to do it really well.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your partnership. It's great to continue to work with you.
You bet.
El Final.